For our next demonstration, I'll be making pork and prawn wonton dumplings. So these are actually going to be steamed, so we're going to be looking at the method of cookery of steaming today. So first up, I'm going to start with my mise en place preparation. So what I've already done today is I've already chiffonade and finely sliced about 8 long stems of coriander. I have also chiffonaded very finely 4 stems of spring onions or shallots. I have finely brunoired some water chestnuts, about 8 water chestnuts. So this is a water chestnut, okay, it's used a lot in Thai cookery. This is actually going to be a nice crunch to our dumpling, add a bit of nice texture to it. I've got 180 grams of pork mince. This is very low in fat. I didn't want any fatty pork mince in my dumplings. I've got some wonton wrappers. These will be used for our dumpling to secure them all together. So the one thing I'm going to actually demonstrate for this practical is how to correctly peel prawns. So I've got my blue chopping board for seafood, for raw seafood. We're going to have to work quite quickly as prawns are a high-risk food item, so they need to only be out of the fridge of 5 degrees Celsius for a very short period of time. So first off, I check the freshness of my ingredients and make sure that the eyes of the prawn are nice and clear. The skin itself, the shell is quite firm and it's got a bit of texture and body. It springs back, so it's quite a nice, fresh smelling prawn. So first thing we do is remove the head of the prawn. And I'm just going to use my thumb and my fingers to remove the legs and then the shell. So what I do for the last bit of the tail is I pinch the tail between my fingers and I just pull it off. I make sure that there's no shell left on the prawn, and there isn't any. So the entire shell must be removed, as shell is a form of physical contamination. If I was to get a shell of a prawn in my dish, it is inedible, you can't eat it, it's a horrible crunchy texture. Therefore, it is a physical contamination. As you can see it, you can taste it, you can feel it. Okay? So I'll just finish these prawns. I'll do them very quickly, making sure I'm removing all of the legs and all of the shell. Okay. So I've peeled all my prawns. Now all I want to do is actually remove the vein that holds the poo tract. Okay, so that actually is a vein that holds a lot of dirt and sand, as that is what prawns eat through. So we just slice through the top of the prawn, spread it open, and pull out that vein. So I'll do it nice and close so you can see. Run my knife along the top, just piercing gently, pull open the side, exposing that vein, and I just remove it with my knife and fingers. So I do that for all of the prawns, working quite quickly. If I didn't remove that vein, what I'm actually doing is, once again, contaminating my prawn product, as sand will go into my dim sim or my dumpling and make the texture of my dumpling very gritty and not very nice in mouthfeel. Okay, they are done. So what I do with my prawns now for the dumplings, I'm actually going to really finely slice these and kind of almost mince them with my knife. I want it to be the same texture and consistency as the prawn mince itself. So I really just chop them quite small, and then I'll very finely chop them all together. Okay, so now that I've finally sliced all those up, I'm going to get my knife and really chop that well. Okay, so I'm going to take that prawn and I'm going to put it straight into a bowl. So now it's time for me to mix all my ingredients together. So I'm going to get my prawn, my pork, coriander, the watered texture for the watered chestnuts, I should say, for crunch, spring onions. I'm going to add some really nice Asian flavours to this as well. So I'm actually going to include two tablespoons of oyster sauce. So that's one, that's two. 1 tablespoon of sweet soy sauce. And I'll incorporate 1 teaspoon of sesame oil. I'm not going to add too much sesame oil as it's a very strong flavour. Sesame oil. Now I'm going to combine all those ingredients really thoroughly. Using the prawn, the pork, spring onions, coriander, watered chestnuts, my sauce of oyster sauce, sweet soy sauce, and sesame oil. So what's that going to create is a nice meaty paste, which will be my filling for my wonton shells for our beautiful pork and prawn wontons. You're going to make sure you really mix this thoroughly. I'm going to evenly distribute all those ingredients into every single wonton so they're all going to be the same. So I can really smell those ingredients coming through. Okay. Lovely. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change chopping boards to a white chopping board, so I'm now going to start dealing with pastry. Now I know that there's meat with this dish, but there's no more contamination to get all the ingredients are combined together. So now it's a case of just filling that wonton pastry and then putting it in the steamer to cook. So I've got my white chopping board. Just going to open my wonton pastry. Wonton pastry is a very thin, translucent square sheet of pastry. Okay, just more like that. Okay, so to fill my wonton with my mixture, what I do is I get a small teaspoon and I just place it directly in the center of my wonton. I get my fingers, just tap it into a bit of water, and I brush my finger just along the sides, and that's going to cause the corn flour, which is on this pastry, to just cause a bit of a glue. Now I bring up the corners all together, wrap it around, make a beautiful little parcel. Bring up all the corners. Into a lovely little wonton parcel. I'm just going to put that into a tray and keep making them. Same process over and over again. A very small amount of mixture. Wet those edges. And bring up the corners. Wrap those corners in on each other. And really pinch them together well. So we're now going to steam our dumplings. So in order to steam, we have a pot that's half filled with very vigorously boiling water. We have our steaming dish, which has holes in it, which just sits over the top of that boiling water, so the steam's going to come through those holes. Then I'll be sealing in that steam just with a lid. So what I do is I get my wontons, which I placed on a ceramic plate, just to protect it from the bottom, and I place those into the steamer and I put the lid on top. Now that's only going to take a few minutes to steam, so we'll come back in about 3 or 4 minutes to see how it's going. Okay, so I'm going to check these prawn wontons to see if they're cooked. In order to do that, I get my thermometer, and I want the centre, the core temperature of that mince, or the prawn and pork mince, to be 75 degrees or above. It's certainly cooked. So now I just turn the heat off and remove the steamed dim sims. Something I'm going to do is organise the nice plating of my dim sims, or my prawn wontons. So I'm going to do these in nice little lines. Careful not to pull them too far because they all stick together. Very gentle. I'm just going to serve that with a soy sauce with some sesame seeds. I'm going to garnish a few of these just with some spring onions. Some with some coriander. And a light sprinkle of sesame seeds. So we have our garnished, presented prawn and pork wontons.